One of the things you and I have talked about over the years is that, like, we're doing less oxidative stress, right? Because we're burning fat, right? But one of the things I think too, I think the other thing that's really important to understand, and this comes out of the exogenous ketone studies, right? That when they're seeing in these exogenous ketone studies that when we're burning ketones as a fuel substrate, that we're getting faster recovery and we can handle more work, right? So recovery benefit and mental clarity and acuity is one of the byproducts of burning ketones. Well, then that makes me think, okay, on OFM, we're producing our natural ketones. We don't have to drink exogenous ketones, right? But we're burning our own ketones all the time. And we're always in a low level of ketosis, right? Or we're knocking ourselves slightly out for maybe a day or two, and during a long run, we have a bunch of some carbs and strategic carbs. And then we're like right back into low level ketosis again, in and out of it. We're hovering in and out of it on OFM, right? So sometimes we're in ketosis, sometimes we're not, right? But we're still producing ketones and we're burning ketones, and our body knows how to use that substrate all the time. And I think that's an important piece of OFM, is that we are actually producing free ketones, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't
not
cost
the expensive exogenous ones. Yeah.
No, I will divulge. I use exogenous ketones in racing and in long runs still. Some I use them strategically, but I don't use them before because I don't want to, even though they tell you to. I don't, as an OFM athlete, and I don't coach my OFM athletes this way. If they're a high carb athlete, then I will tell them to take exogenous ketones before they start a race or a long run. But if they're an OFM athlete, I say, okay, maybe one serving in the middle of the long run and then one afterwards to bump that ketones way up in your blood, but just to help with recovery, because you're going to get a higher surge because you've had carbs. But I don't have them take them before. So I coach my OFM athletes a little different in how they use exogenous ketones. And I do think, I would say, and people ask me this all the time, and I have athletes ask me this that I coach, okay, if you're going to pick between ketones and Vespa, which would you pick? I say Vespa, because we've seen in our studies, Vespa bumps your fat oxidation rate up. And I want my fat oxidation rate bumped up as high as possible during an endurance event. So I think if you're going to pick one over the other, I would pick Vespa first, then exogenous ketones. But I do think ketones have a place to mix into training and as a fuel substrate, because the studies definitely do back up, especially if you're a carb athlete. I think the combination of Vespa and ketones are a great combo to use. But that's what I wanted to kind of say. I wanted to go off on that rabbit trail on ketones because I think because OFM, we're producing ketones and we're teaching our body to tap into our natural converting fatty acids into blood ketones. I think that's a really important piece of this recovery benefit that you're seeing. I think that's one of the key pieces.
That you're exactly right. Let's go down that rabbit hole some more. Okay.
Sure.
So you're absolutely right. When you're fat adapted, your liver can produce all the ketones you need. It can also produce, what people don't know is it also can produce a significant amount of glucose, not glycogen, but glucose. The liver, with the right hormonal signaling, it will produce fuel substrate to meet the metabolic needs. So if you're droning along, even at a high level, like 75, 80%, like where guys like you and Peter can drone along all day at race pace, you're producing a ton of ketones and enough glucose to meet the metabolic need. But because glucose for aerobic energy, glucose and ketones are just considered interchangeable. And I think that actually, when everything's right, your body prefers the ketones over the glucose. They say, how they tell you glucose is your preferred energy source. Absolute BS.
I think so too. I agree with you on that.
Okay, now
I think ketones are our preferred fuel substrate.
Actually, beta oxidation is your fuel preferred. Ketones are a byproduct of beta oxidation.
Yeah, right.
And all these ketone manufacturers, their papers are structured to promote ketones, but it's like our bodies are making ketones all the time, but ketones are a relatively unstable molecule, and you, in most metabolic pathways in the liver and in other parts of our bodies, they're spontaneously converted to something else or used as an energy substrate because they're so unstable. Beta hydroxybutyrate is the most stable, and exogenous ketones have a place, just like gels, just like liquid. Those should be looked at as the icing on the cake or the tip of the iceberg, because if you're fat adapted, because it really is, whereas they become the whole iceberg and the whole cake literally when you're carb dependent. So here's where it comes. Here's a little deeper dive into this whole focus, coordination, motor skills thing. Is it goes further than just ketones. Your body's spitting out ketones. It's going to spit out glucose from the liver. Depending on where you are, you might be starting to use your glycogen and then whatever exogenous stuff you're putting in. But having that base of being super high fat adapted, using the Vespa to get you that little higher level of fat adaptation, right? Your muscles are just really in a deep state of beta oxidation. So, but you're also producing ketones, and like the brain and the nervous system run mostly on glucose and ketones. They don't do beta oxidation very well. And so what happens is when you're in that deep state of fat adaptation, you become what I call blood sugar stable, because you're not diverting all that glucose for muscle energy, right?
Yeah.
And so when your blood sugar is stable, your motor function is good, because what happens is when you lose that, you lose your fine motor skills, your focus, before you even sense the fatigue.